Okay, Laura, this is my garden.
Wow, look at this,
My
in
little-
bloom.
Yeah, it's looking pretty floral at the moment.
It is.
Yeah, it's great in the evening sometimes. You'll just be sat out here with a cuppa and then you'll just hear this low buzz of all the bugs, all the hoverflies and stuff. It's phenomenal.
That's amazing. How long have you been here?
About 2 years now.
Okay.
So when we moved in, this was all just lawn, really. It was a blank canvas, which I was actually prefer it to be like that because I'm not disturbing anything that's already living here.
Yeah.
And I got a piece of paper and drew up this plan, like a kind of dad's army thing. I'm like, right, I want to do this, this and this. And then 2 years later, more or less got it where I want it to be.
Yeah. So this was all lawn. Was
Yeah.
it all of this whole section here? Now you've got, what, how many ponds have you got?
I think technically 6.
Only Jack Perk would have 6 ponds in his garden.
I'm an addict. I'm a pond addict. And I'd have another one. If I didn't have my dog, it needs somewhere to go. I'd just have another pond.
Do you know how big it is? Have you ever measured it? Or?
I haven't, which is really bad. I should have prepared. But I mean, I kind of think of this, I guess, as a mid-sized garden. I don't know if you, I mean, you've seen plenty of gardens. Like, it's not small, but I wouldn't say it's huge either.
It's big enough, isn't it, for you to have plenty of different habitats and things, which you've clearly done.
I mean, I'd love a huge garden, obviously, but it is amazing what you can do with the space
Yeah.
given to you and like finding all the little nooks and crannies and those myriad of different habitats. And that's what I've tried to do, is have a little bit of everything, really.
Yeah.
One of the other key things, because I have problems with my joints and my back, I can't be doing lots of gardening or heavy intensive gardening. So I've tried to do it to a point where pretty much it's low maintenance. The only thing I regularly do is mow the little patch of lawn that I've got. Everything else pretty much just goes wild.
So tell me about this pond.
So this was the first big pond that I kind of dug. More or less, we had to do the house up first. So I was absolutely itching to make this pond. And I wanted it to kind of just be catered for wildlife. So there are some fish in here, and obviously we've done stuff on the channel before about fish and wildlife ponds, but it is mainly for the wildlife. It's got to be like the 6th pond that I've done, and I think with each pond you get a little bit better and you learn new things that you can improve it on. So one of the main things that I wanted from this was to hide the liner, because I don't know about you, when you dig a wildlife pond, if there's exposed liner, it just ruins the illusion a little bit.
Definitely. My first pond was dug 2 years ago, and it's only a small pond, but I made so many mistakes, and one of those mistakes was that I just didn't level it off, and then I had all this exposed liner. So if you've got any tips, I would love to hear them.
So yeah, it's taken me a while to get used to it, but I think if you want to hide liner, the best way I found to do it is you dig a very shallow shelf at the edge of your pond, maybe 2 inches deep, and you put sandstone. I mean, if you haven't got sandstone, you can use anything really. You could use logs or rocks or whatever, and you put that all the way around your pond. So you've got little shelf, a rock, and then the liner on top of that rock, and you put another layer of rocks on top of those rocks. So you need a lot of rocks.
A lot of rocks.
A lot of rocks. But basically that completely hides the liner. You cut off all the excess, and then you plug some of the gaps with soil and clay, and then you can put plants in there, and eventually it comes out like this. All the plants come up through the clay, looks completely natural. There's no sign of the liner.
It's definitely worked, hasn't it? As you say, I mean, I definitely can't spot. I mean, I'm going to have a good look in a minute just to see if I can find any liner. But certainly from here, I can't see any liner. It just looks incredibly natural.
Yeah,
you've done a really good job.
Thank you. That's what I need validation. I do need validation. But with the stones, if you're struggling to get hold of them, people just give them away online. You know, if someone's driven into a dry stone wall or something. So it can be quite cost effective, because to buy that would be quite a lot.
That's a really good tip, isn't it? Because the liner in itself, depending on the size, can cost a few bob, can't it?
Yeah.
But then the plants, so anything that you can beg, borrow, steal, maybe not steal, anything you can beg or borrow, depending on your ethics, I think is definitely a good thing. So
I mean, if you know someone else with a garden pond, I wouldn't really recommend taking stuff from the wild, because you don't know what you're bringing along. But if it's another garden pond, particularly if it's local, that's great, and that can save you a lot of money. So like we've got yellow flag iris in here, we've got yellow water lily, there's another kind of lily in there. So a marsh marigold, so a huge variety of different water and marginal plants, and nearly all of those came from friends and family. We've got a good pond network of people.
4 people that I know. I'm sure you're right in the middle of the pond network. So what kind of creatures do you get visiting? What have you spotted? What's the most exciting thing you've spotted?
Oh, well, I'll start birdie and then I'll go to the more interesting stuff.
Okay.
But I did have a grey wagtail walking around the pond in the winter, so that was really nice to see that. But I've not introduced anything into that pond. Everything's come of its own. And like before we were filming, hopefully it'll come back again. There was a large, I think, southern hawker dragonfly, bright neon blue, really pretty. That was laying eggs in the pond last year. So whether that's come up from those or there's already some in there. So big dragonflies, lots of damselflies, newts, common frogs. It's amazing how much finds it, and in a relatively short period. I think you always read the books or the articles online. They go, oh, within a week you'll have this, and I was like, yeah. But no, literally within a week or two, we already had pond skaters and diving beetles and stuff. Initially, we got some mosquito larvae, but they very quickly get eaten by the other stuff. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want ponds going to be full of mosquitoes.
But it's food.
Yeah, it's great food.
Snacks.
Everything loves to eat it.
Yeah.
So you might get that initially, but to be honest, that goes pretty quickly.
Yeah. Can we have a quick look in there?
Yeah, I don't actually pond dip it very often, so I'll be interested to see what we can scoop up. So I get this conveniently placed net.
Always convenient place. I got this convenient place camera.
Oh, what?
For us to have a look.
What are the chances?
Whoa, so organised.
And do you want me to have a go first, and do you want to go?
You have a go,
okay,
and I'll be ready with this.
I'll
to
channel my
see.
inner child. Let's get a good dip. Oh, that's quite deep.
How deep is it?
Well, if we've got that net, that's a good couple of foot in the middle. So I did that on purpose, more for the winter. Oh, we've got a newt.
Oh,
We've got a newt. Let's have a look what species it is. So I've got 2 in here. That's a palmate newt.
oh wow.
So the way that you tell the difference is that it doesn't have spots on the throat. They also have, they get the name palmate, from the back legs. They've got webbed feet. I'll chuck that one back, shall I?
Yeah.
Oh, off you go.
There we go.
And I've also got a ram's horn snail.
Lovely.
So pretty common snail in garden ponds.
This is not bad for a one dip.
No, I know, one dip wonder.
Yeah.
Let's have another go, see if we can get something really exciting. See if we can get a dragonfly larvae, that'd be pretty cool.
That would be.
Oh no, that was poor, wasn't it?
Come on, let's try harder.
I know, I'm sorry, I'm letting the side down, aren't I? Okay. Oh yeah, we've got a dragonfly larvae.
Oh, excellent.
I'm going to risk my fingers now, pick it up. Just chuck the net down there a second.
Any ideas?
Well, just based on that large one that we saw earlier, I would probably say it's southern hawker again, southern hawker larvae, but feel free to correct me in the comments. I'm sure someone will if I get that wrong. But I think it is a southern hawker. If you see the mandible, one of my favourite facts about them is they inspired the alien from the Alien films.
Oh, really?
So you know how that's got the second mouth that comes out? H.R. Geiger, I think that's the artist who did it. He got that from dragonfly larvae because that mandible shoots out
that's
and
amazing.
catches prey. So yeah, they are alien inspired.
Good little fact.
Yeah. I'll chuck this one back to munch on some tadpoles.
Yeah.
There you go, buddy. So that's a damselfly larvae.
Oh, right. It's such a difference in size,
Yeah,
isn't it? I mean,
lots
obviously there's a size as the adult in the adult form,
Yeah,
but
there is.
it's kind of even more remarkable in the larval form.
And I wouldn't even know where to guess on the species.
Yeah.
I've got at least 2 or 3. There's large red damsels on here, and then a blue one.
We saw some blues, didn't we? Common blue was yours. We don't know.
Doesn't
we
narrow
don't
it
know.
down,
Maybe
does
we can
it?
get a photograph and we can get the guidebook out. But
so it's one of those, but yeah, a little dainty thing. So
Okay.
that would be on the menu for the dragonfly larvae.
yeah.
I'll just chuck you back. Oh, anything else? Oh,
Some nice-
caddis. There's a caddis fly. So the larvae, so they're a kind of fly. They make a shell to kind of put off fish and other predators eating them, and they hide in that. So
they make it, do they, out of sort of debris in the
yeah.
pond?
So some of them make it from stones. Some of them make it from, like this one's made it from weeds and different plant material. So just to put predators off eating them, really. So he's obviously he's retracted in there now.
Yeah.
But there'll be a little caddis.
Yeah, well, it does look like a good defence armour.
Yeah, I'm not going to eat that, I don't think.
Nah.
Or maybe later. Off you go.
Well, that's like for a quick haul.
Yeah, 2 or 3 dips and,
Yeah,
and
that's
all of
not
that. I
bad.
mean, yeah, there's a lot in there. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is obviously the flowers that have come up this year.
This is beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
mean, obviously, it's the first thing you notice when you come in, isn't it?
really bright. I mean, like, because last year this was just grass around the pond, and I left it to grow long last year because I was like, okay, long grass, flowers will come up in between the grass. Everyone says that happens, and the odd thing came up, but it was just kind of long grass, which in of itself is still a valuable habitat, but I wanted to be more useful to pollinators and just look a bit prettier.
Yeah.
So strip that back, and then put in lots of poppy seeds. We've got oxeye daisy.
You've got a spider on the end of your nose. Jack loves his wildlife. He wears it.
Yeah. Oh, there could be this beard has got its own ecosystem. There's all sorts in there.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, lots of different wildflower, and that was the key. I wanted to try and get a diversity. So poppies and oxeye daisy dominate it, but we've also got some wild carrot. We've got purple loosestrife around the pond. Viper's bugler, one of my favourite wildflowers. Absolutely love the colours on that. And I've got a couple of, I guess, unloved plants in there as well, because I think it's valuable to have them in. So nettles. So a lot of people see nettles and scream.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we don't want those in a garden, but so many different invertebrates and different animals eat nettles. So I do keep them under control, but I leave a few nettles because it's really useful for butterflies, for example. Love nettles. And things find their own way as well. Like I've got a big figwort. I've got no idea where it's come from. It's just sprouted up, and there's these absolutely enormous caterpillars on there, some really chunky ones. So yeah, things will find their own way.
Yeah.
But obviously I've given it a helping hand by putting all these wildflowers, all native wildflowers that are coming up.
Yeah. And you can just see it, can't you? Like there's so much life happening here. You can just see everything sort of flying around. It's just beautiful. So this was planted last autumn, did you say?
Yeah, so some plants are beneficial from a frost, some of the seeds. So a lot of it was planted, I think around about September, end of September, and then some of it I did plant in the spring as well. So there's a bit of a mixture there. So it was basically just barren. It looked a bit of a state to start with, and then very quickly it just kind of rose up.
Yeah.
And I've now got this kind of mini Amazon around my pond.
It's stunning.
So this is pond 2.
So what have we got in here?
So this is a native fish pond. So it's not really meant for wildlife, but as you can see,
They love it.
they absolutely go nuts. So I do like this sort of myth that you can't keep fish with other wildlife. Obviously, certain species will benefit without fish, but this pond's got things like roach, rudd, tench, crucians in there, and yet it's just absolutely alive with invertebrates as well.
And you've always got your other pond anyway, haven't you? So you've got that balance.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and I've built this fully in the knowledge that I want fish in it.
So tell me about the building of this one then, because obviously this is a raised one, isn't it? What was the thinking behind that?
Well, I think a lot of people think they've got to dig down, obviously, to do a pond, which is obvious. But yeah, there are other options, and there are easier ways to do it if you can't do that. Maybe that your ground's really tough, like rubbly. Maybe you're on concrete and you can't dig into it. Then a raised pond's a good alternative. Obviously, I've got fish in this, but you could have it for wildlife. And as we can see, it's absolutely covered in invertebrates.
Yeah.
So originally, there was actually a big mound of soil here. It's like a spoil heap. So we got a skip in. We got rid of all of that, and then we dug 2 foot down as well. So this pond's actually 4 foot.
This is quite a deep one.
Well, there is a shelf at the back. I don't know if you see where all the plants are. So that's that's under 1 foot deep. So I've got a shallow marginal shelf, and then it just drops off really deep. And the reason for that is, obviously, I quite like my underwater photography.
Yeah.
So I can get in the pond. So you dig the hole if you're going to dig a hole, but if you don't even have to do that. You level the sleepers off, so that's really important. Make sure they're as level as possible, and then just add as many as you want. I've got 3 sleepers high.
Yeah.
It's matured really nicely. There's no pump, so it's all completely natural. The plants are providing all the oxygen and doing the water quality. So it's pretty clear. I don't know how far you can see in, but the clarity's not bad at all. Admittedly, you very rarely see the fish because they're hiding all the time, but it's just nice to know that they're there.
And have you got any tips then for plants for ponds?
Yeah, I think variety is the spice of life. So when you start a pond, each pond's going to have different pH levels and different amounts of sunlight and chemicals going into it. So the best thing I would recommend is put lots of different plants in, and you'll probably find that, say if you put 10 plants in, maybe 4 or 5 will do really well and the others not so much, and then they're the ones that you concentrate on.
Yeah.
So plenty of marginals. At the back here, we've got different kinds of reeds. We've got peppermint, which you can eat as well, so you can use that in the kitchen. We've got marsh marigold. We've got purple loosestrife. They're all fantastic marginal plants. And then as we go a little bit deeper, we've got yellow water lily. And one of my favourite is curly pondweed. That's great for newts because they can lay the eggs on that.
Okay, that's a good tip.
So, that's not what I want to see. I'm not a huge fan of that. You can go away. Where's my shotgun?
Vicious killer.
So it's probably a good point.
He doesn't shoot cats, by the way. I don't think he does.
No, sorry, I don't. So that's actually why I've got these at the side. I could put a net all the way across the pond, but I think that ruins the view of it a little bit. So I've got some of this wire mesh, and that just stops the cats getting too close to the side to kind of catch any of the small stuff. And I've also got, they look meaner than they are, but they're sort of spikes, plastic spikes that you put around the edge. I mean, if I press down on them, I can't pierce the skin, but it's just uncomfortable for the cats to sit on. So if you've got a bird table or anything that you kind of want to discourage cats from sitting near, that's a great kind of humane way of keeping them away. This is probably slightly unusual, I guess, borderline zookeeping. But I was always interested in reptiles and amphibians growing up.
Yeah.
And just because my job means that I work away a lot, thank you. But just because I work away now, I don't have the time to look after it. And I was introduced to the concept of outdoor keeping. They find a lot of natural food, they've got a lot more space, they get natural UV and clean air. And it's just a great way of keeping them. And obviously, you health check them before they go in because we don't want to be introducing anything like chytrids. So everything's, make sure it's nice and healthy. They're all secure, so nothing can get out. And yeah, it's just one of the many weird hobbies that I enjoy doing. Frogging.
We have to remember that this is the garden of Jack Perks, and which is why we've got this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So this isn't necessarily got wildlife guarding advice for anybody else. This is just you and your little quirky ways.
It's probably me and 5 other people that do it. So on the subject of kind of making use of spaces in the garden, I've got this kind of corner along the fence. I thought, what can I do here? So I've got my pond with the frogs and whatnot, but those frogs need somewhere to live in the winter. And I watched this video online where these 2 people made this hibernaculum video. It was phenomenal.
What could that have been?
Oh, I don't know. It was a great YouTube channel. Everyone should subscribe. They should definitely subscribe.
Presenters, I imagine.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Sounds
stunning.
great. Definitely need to check that out.
So I made a hibernaculum basically. So dug a hole, put loads of wood into it, loads of soil. That was one. I've done another one behind there. So you see that corrugated sheet there. There's one under there. And actually, I've got my decking area. And obviously, you know, wildlife gardeners, they hear decking and they shrivel inside.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I need somewhere to sit. But underneath the decking, I've also built a big hibernaculum there.
Perfect.
So
That's such a good idea.
Yeah, so the frogs and the newts and everything can go under that decking, and they've got somewhere to hide away. But I guess it's just providing as many nooks and crannies. So I've got these rockeries on the edge of the flower meadow. I've got the compost heap as well. Yeah. So there's so many places for all these amphibians and other wildlife to get in and hide.
No space wasted, essentially.
No.
You've made use of it. I love that decking idea. That's such a good idea. Because, like you say, it is important that people have somewhere to sit and enjoy the garden. You know, you put all this hard work in. You want to be able to sit out there with a cup of tea or a G&T.
Yeah.
Whichever kind of tea is your kind of tea. And enjoy it and see, you know, reap the rewards of your hard work.
I think when people think of wildlife gardening, they do think of, like, you know, beavers jumping around and like absolutely feral. And I think it's important, you need an area for you as well. Like, you've got to have somewhere that you can sit and enjoy the wildlife, and my dog as well.
You and your dog, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, even this is such a nice area. This is just such a pleasure to look at because, as you say, you've got all of these bits, and just even this, you know, you've got your wood pile here. You've drilled some holes into your log here for the bees.
It also provides a bit of valuable shade as well for the pond, because you don't want your pond in full sun. So it means that, you know, this garden's a massive sun trap. I mean, we're obviously sweating like crazy today, but the pond then just gets a bit of vital shade from that buddleia.
Yeah.
So that's important for ponds as well.
So tell me about your plans for the garden then.
So one of the things I was keen to do was sort of fill as many spaces as possible and try and add a bit of greenery or something of interest to wildlife.
Yeah.
So behind us we've got these trellises, and I've put climbers on each of these because we didn't want hedges. Obviously we've already got a fence. So the idea is if we've got these climbers, that's going to be adding a bit of nectar, a bit of green cover, trying to attract more insects and birds into those areas. So we've got honeysuckle here, which is kind of like a classic climber for that. So that's only gone in this year, so it's not kind of filled all the spaces yet. We've got a clematis over there, and then the others haven't quite worked. So it is weird how one works and others don't. But you know, I only put them in. I only put them in a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
But the plan is eventually that'll hopefully be a nice little green wall for insects and birds to utilise.
And that's a good tip for people as well, isn't it? Because not everybody can kind of take their fences down and put hedges in, especially if they're renting or whatever. So to know that they can still grow things and that fence still can be green and good for wildlife is a nice little tip. And what kind of other things have you done? You know, because a lot of the things that I've seen is you're just kind of every area you're thinking, what can I do to this to attract wildlife? What other things have you done?
So I've got an old coal house, so where we live is an old mining area. So with that, I've just tried to cover that in greenery. So I've got ivy growing up the side of it. Love ivy. Again, that's another one of those unloved plants.
Yeah.
But a lot of things eat the ivy. You've got the berries later in the year. You've got very early flowering flowers on it. So always recommend having a little bit of ivy on that. I've got the rose on the other side of bird box. Had nothing nesting in my bird box yet, but you know,
yet being
fingers
the key
crossed.
word.
And then at the top, I've got a green roof, and I think this is something I was introduced to. I can't remember if it was in London. They started doing like kind of bigger green roofs, but again, this is relatively small scale. So if you've got a shed or any kind of outside building that's raised, you can build a green roof, and it's essentially just some pieces of wood, only 2 or 3 inches. A little bit of compost, a little bit of soil in there, and then plant some really drought-resistant plants in there because they're not going to get a lot of water. So I've got sedum in mine, a little bit of rosemary and a few other little bits and bobs. And at the minute, it's just a carpet of flowers, which otherwise would have just been bare concrete.
Would have been wasted space, but you filled it. So did you plant these from seed, or were these plugs? Or
I put them in as plants. So again, I've just been pillaging my mum's garden, but she already had a rockery, so I just took lots of bits of sedum and then scattered that around, and it's just gone absolutely nuts now. So that's a massive nectar that wouldn't have been there before.
So Jack, you told me a little while ago that you've got 6 ponds. So we've got the wildlife pond, we've got the fish pond, and we've got the 3, I mean, whatever you call those at the back there, frog enclosure ponds. Where is your 6th pond?
So the 6th pond is in my front garden. That was the first pond that I had in because as soon as we moved in, I was like, I need a pond. And it's only a little tiny thing, but I think it's just to prove the point that, you know, when someone says, oh, I don't have room for a pond, there's no such thing as not having room for a pond. Everyone has room for a pond, even if it's a little one. And these little pre-formed fiberglass ponds, they're like 20 quid, they're not a huge amount of money. If you can't bury them in the ground, you can pack mud around them, you can make them look really nice. And although you might not get the variety of wildlife as a bigger pond, I like to think of them as a sort of stop off on the motorway for wildlife. So when that frog's coming from someone else's garden pond, it might stop in that little mini pond before it then goes on to another one. So these mini ponds are really vital stop off points and easy to do.
But also they're a gateway pond.
Yeah.
To the harder ponds.
To the more hardcore ponds. Yeah.
Once you have that pond, I think it's like anything, you can then get excited about it, and especially if you've got kids, you know, that kind of thing. So I think it's a really good idea. Plus it doesn't have to be a £20 jobby, can it? It can be a washing up bowl or something similar, can't it?
Doesn't need to look pretty. The wildlife don't care what it looks like. You know, if you just want a practical, just chuck anything in there and it takes less than an hour. It's a really quick thing to do. So definitely recommend getting a small pond in.
That's good. So what kind of general advice would you have for somebody then? Because I mean, obviously you can see how much love and hard work has gone into your garden. It is absolutely stunning. And I imagine some people watching this, especially if they're starting out, might be a little bit, how am I ever going to get to this point? But what advice would you have for somebody like that?
I guess this has sort of taken me about 2 years to get to this point. And I think it's just all about, don't worry about doing everything at once. Just do it in stages, do that well, and then when you're happy with that, then move on to the next bit. So, you know, I did my little mini pond, then I did my wildlife pond, then I did the meadow around it, and I just kind of pre-plan it. And I think what I did was get a little piece of paper and draw it all out. I'm quite kind of practical like that. I thought, this is where I want that, this is where I want that. So do it in stages basically, and then work up from there.
Well, thanks so much for showing me around your beautiful wildlife garden today, Jack.
Thanks for coming over.
Thank you for having me. So we are going to be making a whole bunch more of these videos, so make sure you like this video and subscribe if you've enjoyed this little look around Jack Perk's garden. And also check out Jack's website, which is
www.jackperksphotography.com.